Hello everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you, so let's begin. My name is Carter. My last relationship taught me that when someone tells you they'll decide when you spend time together, they're really telling you that you've become an option rather than a priority. And the strongest response is to remove yourself from their list of options entirely. I'd been with Lily for a year when she told me that, from then on, she'd decide when we'd spend time together, and I needed to stop bothering her. A year that had started with genuine connection and consistency, but had deteriorated into something cold and one-sided before finally exploding on a Saturday afternoon I'll never forget. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to tap the like button and leave a comment on where you're watching from. Let's know ourselves. Now back to the story. We met when she was in her mid-20s at a group meetup, and we had good chemistry from the start. We met up a couple of times after that and started seeing each other regularly within weeks. We were both living in Charlotte because I have never been a fan of out-of-state relationships. I was working in commercial insurance sales, and she worked as a paralegal at a mid-sized law firm. The early relationship had everything that makes you believe you found something real. We had consistency in communication and effort. I felt the affection we had was both natural and mutual. We shared plans and dreams about where we might go together. I felt that sense of building towards something meaningful rather than just passing time. Our routines became essential parts of my life. Due to the nature and busyness of our work, we had late-night phone calls where we'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. We had spontaneous meetups when one of us had free time unexpectedly. We planned our weekend activities together. Regular date nights that felt special rather than obligatory. I genuinely believed we were building a future together. Something worth investing time and emotional energy into. Lily seemed emotionally present throughout most of that first year. I initiate contact as often as I can in my free time. I would make plans and follow through, show affection consistently through words and actions, and talk about future possibilities with genuine interest rather than vague deflection. Until the gradual change, it was easy to rationalize as temporary stress or busyness. Lily's replies to my messages slowed. What used to be immediate responses, or at most an hour, became several hours, then half a day, and sometimes not until the next day. She began canceling plans we'd made at the last minute, always with vague excuses. Work was busy, she wasn't feeling well, something had come up with her family. Individually reasonable explanations, but they accumulated into a pattern that felt like avoidance. Her tone, when we did talk, changed noticeably. The warmth and excitement disappeared. She stopped sending random voice notes, something she'd done constantly before. Her text messages became shorter, less affectionate, more perfunctory, like she was checking a box rather than genuinely wanting to connect. Most tellingly, she stopped initiating any contact. I'd always text or call first. She'd respond eventually, but never reached out on her own. Never asked how my day was. Never suggested we get together. Just passively responded to my efforts while contributing nothing. I tried not to overthink it initially. I rationalized that she might be stressed from work because I know paralegal work could be demanding, and maybe she was going through a hectic period. I decided to give her space rather than be clingy or demanding. But confusion grew quietly despite my attempts to rationalize her behavior. I started wondering if I'd done something wrong with how cold she was to me. I replayed all our recent interactions, looking for moments where I might have upset her or crossed some boundary I wasn't aware of. I couldn't identify anything specific. We hadn't had arguments before her change in attitude, nor had we had any dramatic incidents or conflicts. The distance appeared without any triggering event I could point to. So I waited, gave her space, and hoped she'd bounce back naturally if I didn't pressure her or make demands about her time and attention. The more months passed, the more undeniable the change became, rather than possibly temporary. Lily didn't ask about my day anymore, didn't care to check in the way she used to. Even when we spoke on the phone or met briefly, her energy was completely different. Sometimes she'd sound irritated when I called to ask why she hadn't replied to the messages I sent to her, like I was interrupting something more important. She seemed uninterested in anything I had to say. Even when she doesn't sound irritated, she responds with minimal engagement. I started comparing the Lily from 6 months ago to the Lily I was dealing with now. The difference was shocking. How fast and completely she'd shifted from warm and engaged to cold and distant. Like someone had flipped a switch and she'd become a different person. I started wondering if someone else had entered the picture, or if she'd met someone new and was emotionally invested elsewhere while keeping me around as a backup or out of guilt about ending things formally. But I didn't want to assume or accuse without evidence. I just knew that something fundamental had changed, and I needed to understand what. After weeks of this pattern, me reaching out, her responding minimally and coldly, the relationship exists in this limbo of technically together but functionally over. I reached a breaking point and needed clarity, not from a place of anger, but just a genuine need to understand what was happening. To know if this relationship still existed in any meaningful sense, or if we were just going through motions neither of us actually wanted. I sent Lily a message asking if we could meet and spend time over the weekend. I didn't mention anything about solving the relationship problem. Instead, I convinced her of the need to spend the weekend together. But deep down, I knew we would have a conversation about where things stood face to face. She agreed reluctantly. Her response had a tone of obligation rather than desire. She wasn't as excited as she used to be when we were to spend time, but she couldn't find a good reason to refuse coming over that weekend. We set a time for her to come to my apartment on Saturday afternoon. I spent the days before preparing mentally for the conversation, nervous about what she might say, but hopeful that talking directly would clear up whatever had created this distance. Saturday arrived. Lily showed up at my apartment acting surprisingly normal, like the past weeks of coldness hadn't happened. For a moment, I wondered if I'd overreacted, if I'd been too sensitive about normal relationship fluctuation and was about to create a problem where none existed. We spent the entire afternoon watching movies, but as it got dark outside, I started the conversation carefully. I told her I'd been missing the way we used to be, that I'd noticed considerable distance between us over the past months or so, and that I was trying to understand what had changed. I wasn't accusing her of anything. I was just expressing my observations and feelings, hoping she'd offer some explanation or reassurance. Instead, Lily snapped immediately. Her pleasant demeanor evaporated in seconds. She asked why I was always complaining and trying to ruin a perfect moment, why I wanted her to always be with me, whether I thought she was my nanny, who had to be constantly available. The hostility came out of nowhere. I was stunned and completely unprepared for her reaction. She acted like someone who'd apparently been holding significant resentment and was unleashing it at the first opportunity. Before I could respond or even process what was happening, Lily stood up abruptly, started gathering her things and shoving them into her bag with aggressive movements. I watched in silence, trying to understand where this anger was coming from and why she'd agreed to meet if she was this hostile toward me. It felt like she'd come prepared for a fight, like she'd been waiting for me to bring up the distance so she could explode rather than actually discuss anything. She headed toward my apartment door, then turned back and made a statement that broke my heart over again. She said that from now on, she'd decide when we spent time together, that I needed to stop bothering her, that communication would happen on her terms and her timeline. Then she left without waiting for my response. She didn't look back as she walked out and closed the door behind her. I stood there in my living room feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My brain kept replaying what had just happened, trying to understand how a conversation I'd hoped would bring clarity and reconnection had turned into her yelling at me and walking out. How could someone I'd loved and invested a year in to speak to me with such disrespect? I felt robbed of closure, of explanation, and of any understanding about what had actually gone wrong between us. I spent that entire day in silence. My hurt was mixed with confusion. The rejection mixed with this growing clarity that the relationship I'd been trying to save had been over for longer than I'd wanted to admit. By the next day, I'd made a decision. If Lily wanted space, I wouldn't interrupt it. If she wanted to control all communication, I'd let her by simply not communicating. If she wanted to decide when we spent time together, she could choose, and I decided not to be available when she decided she wanted me. In the days that followed, I wouldn't call her, wouldn't text her, and wouldn't check in or try to fix whatever had broken between us. I realigned my focus on my work, my routines, and rebuilding the parts of my life I'd been neglecting for a while. The first weeks after that confrontation were brutal. Habits are hard to break, and I'd gotten used to reaching out to Lily regularly, even when she doesn't reply as she used to. But the silence forced emotional detachment. Each day, without any contact with her, made the next day easier. Each night, without talking, made her feel less central to my life. After about a month, I noticed I'd stopped thinking about her constantly. I would now go hours or even full days without wondering what she was doing or whether she'd reached out. The silence that had started as painful became peaceful. 2 months passed without any communication between us. I'd moved forward with my life because I believed she did too. I focused the time I spent on her in the past on work, spent more time with friends I'd been neglecting, and picked up hobbies I'd dropped. Gradually, I started feeling like myself again rather than like someone desperately trying to hold together something that kept falling apart. One evening, I posted an Instagram story. It was just a photo from a weekend event I attended with friends. Within minutes of posting, Lily reacted with a heart emoji to it and left a comment about how fun it looked. It felt like an apparent attempt to get my attention after 2 months of silence. I saw the notification, read her comment, and felt absolutely nothing as I looked at her name on my screen. I ignored responding or acknowledging her in any way. Over the next few days, she started calling my phone repeatedly. Calls at various times of the day, midday, evening, late at night. Sometimes there are multiple calls in a row. I didn't answer any of them. Not out of spite or revenge. Out of self-protection. Out of recognition that whatever she wanted now, it wasn't about me or our relationship. I guessed it was about something she needed that she thought I could provide. About a week after the call started, I was at work one afternoon when the receptionist called my extension and told me someone was at the front desk asking for me. She didn't give a name, but said it was personal and urgent. I went to the lobby and saw Lily standing there. That day, she looked anxious, restless, and agitated. Different from the cold, hostile person who'd walked out of my apartment 2 months ago. Immediately, she saw me. She started saying she needed to talk to me, that she needed my help with something important. I cut her off before she could elaborate. I told her calmly that I couldn't help her and I needed to get back to work. Then I turned and walked back to my office without waiting for her response. I later heard from the receptionist that Lily had stood there for several minutes, looking upset, before finally leaving. A few days later, I learned through a mutual friend the real reason Lily had shown up at my workplace. She hadn't come for closure, to apologize, or to try to restart our relationship. She'd needed financial help. Apparently, there was some urgent situation she was dealing with, and she'd thought of me as someone who might bail her out. The friend didn't know all the details, but knew enough to confirm that Lily's sudden reappearance was motivated by a need for something from me rather than an actual desire to reconnect. That realization stung, but also clarified everything. I hadn't been a person to her toward the end of our relationship. I'd been a resource. Someone convenient who provided attention and support and help when she wanted it. And when she'd gotten whatever else she needed elsewhere, probably another guy, probably someone she'd thought was better or more exciting, she'd withdrawn from me completely. But when that hadn't worked out or when she'd needed something I could provide, she tried to reactivate our connection. Not because she missed me or valued me, because I was useful. I never learned the full story of why she'd changed so dramatically during those weeks before our final conversation. I never got an explanation for where the coldness had come from or what had shifted. My guess, based on her behavior, was that she'd met someone else and had emotionally invested in that new connection while keeping me around as backup. She had resented my continued efforts to maintain our relationship because they interfered with whatever new thing she was pursuing. When that hadn't worked out, and apparently it hadn't given her sudden attempts to reconnect, she'd looked for the safety net she'd kept in place. But I'd removed myself from that role and stopped being available for someone who treated me as optional. Eventually, I stopped needing the full explanation, stopped caring about the specific timeline of when she checked out, who she'd been seeing, or what exactly had motivated her behavior. I understood that the details didn't matter. What mattered was that someone who could treat me with such disrespect wasn't someone I should be in a relationship with, regardless of the circumstances. Looking back now, about a year since Lily walked out of my apartment, declaring she'd control when we spent time together, I understand everything more clearly. I learned that sudden coldness and withdrawal in a relationship aren't problems to be solved through patience. That is a sign that the relationship is ending. The person pulling away is telling you they're done, even if they don't say it explicitly. I learned that when someone makes a unilateral statement about how a relationship will function, they're revealing they view the relationship as something they control rather than something built mutually. I learned that silence can be more potent than confrontation. That refusing to chase someone who's pulled away is often the strongest response. That sometimes the best thing you can do is remove yourself from someone's list of options. I learned that when someone returns after ghosting or withdrawing, it's rarely about missing you. It's usually about needing something they think you can provide. That genuine remorse and desire to reconnect looks different from a convenient reappearance when you're useful again. Most importantly, I learned that my self-respect is worth more than any relationship. That I won't accept being treated as optional or convenient. That I deserve someone who values my presence rather than resents it. Some people watching this might think I should have answered Lily's calls or listened when she showed up at my workplace. That I should have given her a chance to explain or apologize. But those people don't understand in detail what has already happened. Don't know the battles I faced in the months of coldness, the hostile confrontation, and the statement that I was bothering her. I'd already given Lily a year of my time and energy and affection. I had given her countless opportunities to communicate or address problems, and had given her space when she withdrew. She'd used all of that to pull away and eventually explode at me for trying to maintain the connection we had. I didn't owe her anything more, especially not when her return was motivated by need rather than genuine care. I hope to fall in love with someone else when I am done healing, and I know that I won't tolerate coldness, withdrawal, and hostile statements about controlling the relationship. That I've learned to recognize those patterns and walk away before wasting months trying to fix something the other person has already decided to abandon. Lily taught me that lesson, and I'm grateful for the lesson even though learning it was painful. Because now I know my worth, know what I deserve, and know what genuine mutual investment looks like versus someone keeping me around as an option. The strongest response to being told you're an option is to remove yourself entirely from their choices. That's what I did. And I've never regretted it, not even for a moment, because the peace I found in that silence was worth more than anything that relationship could have given me. And the lessons I learned will protect me from ever accepting that treatment again. Walking away from someone who'd already left emotionally isn't giving up. It's refusing to be the only one fighting for something they've already abandoned. And that's not a weakness. Instead, it's a strength. The kind of strength that comes from finally valuing yourself enough to stop accepting less than you deserve. I have that strength now. Learned it through painful experience with someone who taught me exactly what I won't tolerate. And I'll carry that lesson forward into every relationship from here.